excited for today's show because we are wrapping up the 10-part series on how to build and grow your firm from the start to finish. Or if you're one of those who already has your firm rolling, this is that fine-tuning going, looking at all the different elements. So stick around for today's shows. We're going to uncover some pretty powerful follow-up sequencing and the way to do what, Shane, you like to refer to as shock and awe.
Yeah,
Shock and awe.
and I think I took that term from one of my mentors years ago who talked about it. And I've had one almost from the very beginning, but also I know it's big in the small business community to have a shock and awe package and drip campaign. But before we roll into that, I know this is the last episode of this series. I'm actually, and you were talking about the folks who've already got their firm rolling. This is just sort of the basics. We're moving into our series on breaking through plateaus, which is exciting for me because that's really where the big growth comes through. That's where a lot of listeners are stuck. I mean, I've been stuck there a couple times in my career, and some of the techniques I use to bust through those levels, right? Because to me, nothing's worse. I mean, I don't want to say nothing's worse, but it's really bad when you're stuck at a certain level year after year after year. About year 3, it starts to really wear on me. And I think I'm looking forward to that series because I know my perspective. I want to get your perspective and or not even perspective, but I mean, I know you've helped me break through one of mine. So it's how we build and grow through those plateaus. I think would be super helpful for our listeners. But back to shock and awe.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. And that's the thing with the show in general. Like, guys, when you tune in here, we're continually covering conversations and subjects that actually are relevant to you. Right. Yeah. And some of them might be more relevant because you're like, oh, shoot, this is new, or this is helping me to this next level. And others, you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's also something. But I think the key distinction I want to make, Shane, is everything we talk about on this show is literally the way you grew Smith Law.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all based on real stuff, right? It's not theory. It's not something I read in the book and didn't do. I mean, I've done all of this stuff. And even when you talk about going back and listening to this, even if you've got your firm going, it made me think about, even the transitions we take, right? You've got one person in a management role, they leave. You've got another person who comes in, they leave. You've got a third person who comes in. It makes a lot of sense to go back and look at all the things you were doing with person number 1, because I can almost guarantee, unless you are super, super careful, there's some stuff that you used to do with person number 1 that you're not doing for person number 3, and there's not a good reason why it's not happening. It just dropped off.
Yeah.
And that's from your reports, your management's, slides, but also from activities. I mean, I remember, and we're talking about shock and awe here today. We're in one of our meetings, and we went through that transition 2 or 3 times, and I asked the new person, like, hey, how many shock and awe packages we send out last week? They're like, what do you mean? And I was like, how many shock and awe packages did we send out last week? And they're like, well, what's the shock and awe package? I'm like, the big box of stuff we send, or the folder we send, or the digital shock and awe package we send? Oh, I don't know. I think none. And I'm like, dude, what happened, right? And it just to show you've got to check on stuff, and you've got to have stuff on your management slides. I mean, the easiest solution, right, is my Wednesday management slides, shock and awe packages sent out this week. Boom, easy. But we would have caught it before, but we didn't, and then we make that change and we make that shift. So even if you've got a successful practice, there's value in listening to these basics and just checking in, making sure you're still doing the stuff you did that got you where you're at today.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing is the fact that systems and routines never go away. And your ability to succeed in life is literally being able to measure what matters and be able to put things in place and then continue doing them.
And it's always like, how far down in the weeds do you want to get in your measuring, right? Because there's data I need, but then there's also data my management team needs that I don't need to see, right? I only need to see it if there's a problem or something's going on. And I think that's where a lot of times the drop-off happens, is when data gets reported up to your manager to help them with their job, but it doesn't need to come to you. But then the new person comes in and they don't get the same data, so it drops off. I think is where a big issue happens. And I think there's a lot of value in systematizing what gets reported up to your managers. So that's in a system. So that data stays the same if there's a transition. and you even have, as the supervisor or CEO, have the ability to reach down and pull that data that goes up to them and make them keep copies of that. So it's there historically.
Yeah. Well, we just got off a call, Shane, where we've got one of our team members, and we're like, hey, here's the data we need. We need this systematized. We need it every Monday and Thursday. Yeah. Give it to us in this form so that we can make the correct decisions moving forward, so that we are doing this with real data, not guesswork, or it's all part of that. And it's now in a system. It's a process. It's like, here's how we do it. And it's there. Yeah, there's a way.
And historically saving that data, right? So. Yep. But let's get to shock and awe and follow-up campaigns, because I'm a big believer in these.
So tell everybody when you say shock and awe, for those who don't know what you mean, what are you talking about?
So to me, what a shock and awe package is basically your Love Me book, right? It's what you're going to send somebody that says why they ought to hire you versus somebody else. Mm-hmm. And it's based on facts, right? So years ago we did a bunch by mail, and we would have a folder. And we would send some case results. We would send a book, a physical copy of a book I wrote. We would send an audio version of that same book. We would send some client testimonials. And then maybe one or two tear sheets, like talking about various specific parts of personal injury, like MedPay, for instance. But the big part, honestly, was, it's something in their hands that goes there. It's a branded folder. It's got some testimonials. It's got some results. And the book leads a little bit of gravitas, because people are like, oh, this is before everybody knew about print on demand and all that stuff at Amazon. You had to actually buy books from a publisher and send them to people. And nobody ever read the book. I mean, nobody reads the book. I had 2 people read the book in 10 years. But some people would listen to the audio tape, but it also just says I've got all this stuff. And it sort of is something else nobody else is doing, right? So we would send that, then we transition to a digital version of the same stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're going to do that, spend a little bit of money getting it done by a professional. And what I mean by that is, don't just scan and create one big PDF of your junk, right? Spend a little bit of money, $1,000 or $2,000, to get somebody, a designer, to do it, so digitally when they click on it, it opens up, right? Nobody wants 10 attachments to an email. And you can have it designed perfectly good, and it's almost like a digital sales brochure selling you to the client. And that's your digital shock and awe. But if you don't have any money, okay, cool. Just get a folder, get a branded folder. You're going to order those, get some client testimonials, print those out, throw them in there, get some case results, throw them in there, and get some 1 or 2 page flyers, right? Talking about your firm, how you came to, building up your experience, and then a little bit about, your special area of specialty, your personal injury, bankruptcy, Social Security, things like that. You can get all of that done, and none of that's going to cost you any money.
Yeah.
Except for maybe buying the folders. And if you want to, do it all digitally. That's possible. I mean, we do more digital now than we do physical copies. For our practice, physical copies go out to what we would consider high-value cases, right? Cases where it's going to be, $100,000, they're going to get a physical copy, but, smaller numbers, we're probably just sending out the digital one, because that doesn't cost any money. And you send a link, boom, it goes right to it.
Let me ask you this, Shane, how do you determine who gets the big shock and awe and who gets the limited one? Is it a dollar amount? Is it a previous relationship? Where's that?
It's usually, if we can judge based on what the injuries are, that's what we're going to do, right? A dollar amount, and to some extent, it doesn't even matter. I mean, I have run tests before where we pretty much mailed it out to everybody, and as we got bigger, we scaled that down, which, to be quite honest, I'm not sure is the best decision. But as we went to more, but that also was easier back then, because everybody would call in. There weren't leads from websites where all you had was a phone number and an email address. There wasn't leads from, pay-per-click and Google Business where basically you don't have an opportunity to talk to them, right? So therefore, to give them a physical copy, we've got to get them on the phone. We've got to qualify them. We've got to get their address. And then then we usually look at the dollar figure, right? And for us, it's how big we expect that settlement to be. and it's usually 50 to 100 grand. More like 100 grand is the normal. It can be a lower amount if we think that's going to be not an easier case, but like a DUI or something like that. We'll give them the physical copy. Right. Everybody gets the digital one. Everybody who contacts my firm, if we've got a phone number, we got an email address, you're getting the digital one, because why would you not do that?
Yeah. Well, it's free. It's as simple of putting it together and sending it out on that. So it's interesting as you talk of shock and awe. Like, there's a couple things that are coming to my mind that I've received the shock and awe, and I still remember them distinctly. And I actually still have both of the items that were sent to me their logos are on them, the branding, so the company's names, all of that. I mean, one of them was interesting. The company had nothing to do with knives, but they sent me a knife, and it had their name, their logo and their name was on the blade of the knife, and then the handle was like this green, what is it? The survival rope. So it was like made out of the survival rope, and it had this green sheath. It was like this canvas sheath. So it was quality enough. It wasn't like a crazy expensive knife, but it was quality enough that I'm like, wow, holy crap.
And we've got that too. We've got like version 2.0 of my shock and awe, of the physical shock and awe, which we call that a swag box, right? So we've got our physical shock and awe, which is basically the folder and that sort of stuff. And that costs, I think it's about $12 to mail out, all in.
Right.
And then we've got our higher end swag box that's closer to $30, right?
Yeah.
And that's got the T-shirt in that's branded. It's got one of those little cup things everybody drinks out of, not a Yeti cup, but similar to that. It's got a koozie. It's got some of that stuff, and stuff rotates in and out of that depending on what we decide to buy, right?
Yeah.
But it's about a $30 thing. Those go to, trucking cases. Those go to, any kind of catastrophic case, because we want to get them because it makes you stand out, right? Like you said, you've gotten two, and you've got stuff from both, and you know what the item is, and you're much more likely to remember who that is, or at that time, you're like, wow, this is different. These people are really, they want me as a client, right? Which I think clients want to know that your lawyer wants to talk to them, right? That they're not just a number. They're not somebody you don't care about. And it's an investment in them, right? You're sending it to them. They get it kind of deal.
Yeah, well, in both of those situations, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars with both of those people, created business relationships, and it's also been very fruitful for me. But there were other competitors at the time with both of these companies that were vying for me as a client. But so it wasn't like they were the only one and they were coming in. It was like, no, this is, and I get this, and as dumb as it sounds, the other one was a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It was just a stupid T-shirt. And, and it had a saying on the front that I liked. It was part of kind of their slogan as a company. But there was this weird sense, and this is why I want to share with everyone from the client's perspective, is that there's this weird sense of indebtedness to you when you receive something of value, right? We want to karmically get everything equal. So when I receive value, I want to give value back, which means if anything else, I'm just going to give you at least more of my time. I'm gonna actually listen to what you have to say, and then if you are good at what you do and you're a good attorney and you know how to actually help this person and client, well, I'm listening, I'm hearing you, which is really one of the hardest things to overcome when you're dealing with, obviously, the noise that's out there and how many people, right? If in the PI space, right, somebody's in a car accident, how many other attorneys are going after that client?
Right, and in the legal space, right, it's got to have de minimis value, really like no real value for any of the items, right? Which is why T-shirts and some branded stuff works, But yeah, it shows there's value and that the attorney values that relationship, that they want it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with clients wanting to know that you want to help them, right? I firmly believe if you think you do a good job, you have a moral obligation as an attorney to try to get business. To have that business go to you because you do a good job and care versus to somebody else who doesn't care, right? Who doesn't do a good job. Now, if you're a terrible lawyer, okay, that's a different story, right? We got to work on that.
Yeah,
assuming you're good at what you do and you're better than Joe down the street who's a general practitioner, or Joe down the street who's just a terrible lawyer, then you have an obligation to do it. Like years ago, I went and watched a lawyer in court, and I was like, dude, he gave me the confidence to go into criminal defense because I watched him and I was like, he's a terrible lawyer, right? I'm like, he's absolutely awful. I can do that. I'm certainly that good. And what was funny is I talked to another lawyer afterwards, and he goes, "What'd you think about him?" I'm like, I had some, whatever. He goes, "Yeah, he's not actually allowed to practice on anything but a misdemeanor, because he's the judges in this county have told him that." And I was like, "Holy cow!" So my assessment was correct, but that just means you've got to be a good lawyer. You've got to be a good lawyer, right? Fundamentally, you got to figure that out.
Well, no marketing, no seduction, no shock and awe is going to compensate for you being bad at what you do. Right. It just won't. Like you can even be really good at marketing, but as soon as they get in your ecosphere, and you'll never grow and scale. You just won't, because people, know word of mouth, and you'll get word of mouth, but it'll be the wrong direction.
It'll be the wrong one, right?
Yeah,
So that's shock and awe, right? It's your first sort of impression you can give to a person that's going to build up your professionalism, build up your results, and make people really want to listen to you more and know that you are a professional and know what you're doing, right? That was the whole point in the book. That's the whole point in the audio version of the book. But you can do the same thing with, similar with even just tear sheets, right? 1 or 2 pages that explain your process and give some information, right? We used to do this with like medical payment coverage on your deck page, We would send it out, and it's a 1 page that explains this in detail. Or some people will do it with an article they wrote. They'll just send it to the client, right? So like if you were published in a legit magazine, or even you could say even a blog post, but like a legit, any kind of peer-reviewed or any kind of bar results or anything like that, I would put that in there, right? I would send it with it to show you're the expert. In the past, we've had portions of blogs where we print it out and send it to people, right? In the packet. Especially, this is an advanced technique, but if you didn't sell that client because of some particular issue, right? Like they were concerned about property damage on the car. I would include, and you have the ability, you could include some stuff about property damage. You could, if one of their objections was going to the doctor, or they going to the doctor, you could include some medical information in there, right? If you have the ability to customize that. And at one time we did in my office, right, when we were doing various types of personal injury work, we had like 3 or 4 different shock and awe packages. We had one for car wrecks, one for slip and falls, one for dog bites, one for drunk drivers. So we got pretty granular. There's no need to do that in the beginning. In the beginning, I would say get your digital one together, right? Yeah. Get your digital one together, send it out on everybody who you don't close that day.
Yeah. I'm curious if you ever did this, Shane. If not, I'm going to recommend to everyone listening to do this thing. But if you ever gone and signed up for other people's marketing to see what 100%. They do? Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah. So why do that? What's the point in that?
To see what you're not doing, right? I've done it and I've had it done to me, right? And what I mean by that is when I did jail mail years ago, I came up with doing postcards as opposed to letters, right? And I would send them out. And I had a lawyer call me he had a legit shock and awe package. He was a big dog. I was a little dog, so I was actually shocked. And he was asking me about the postcard and whether I thought it violated any rules or not. And I was like, no, it doesn't violate any rules. That's silly. And he goes, well, I don't know. I'm going to check with the bar. And then the bar told him, no, it didn't violate any rules. He was being silly. And he was like, dude, I'm going to steal that from you. Right. So, and he just legit told me. And right. It was a little flattering, but also a little irritating on a couple levels. One, I came up with a new idea he didn't have. And 2, he tried to get me in trouble with the bar. He didn't try to get me in trouble with the bar. He tried to get the bar to look at my stuff, give him permission to then steal it. And I'm like, dude, come on. But I did that. I've done it with any of the jail mail stuff when I was newer. And then I've also done it when I move into a new market. And then periodically, right, you'll talk to a client. You'll be like, hey, are you getting any of this stuff? And if they are, say, hey, why don't you collect it? Can you send it to me? And a lot of clients are perfectly happy to do that. Mm-hmm. I think it's great if you're moving into a new practice area. It's also great to periodically do it just all the time so you see what everybody else is doing. Yep. And I've done it with other marketers too. Right now, I never lie, right? So I'm not going to go on to a car wreck lawyer's website and pretend I've been in an accident and say, send it to me. I don't do that. Now, I will go onto people's websites, and they say, hey, download get our free information, put your info in, I'll put it in and have them send it to me, right? I'm not going to make something up, but I certainly will get their stuff so I can see it if they're going to send it to me. And usually they'll send it to you digitally. And you're not, like I say, you go on there, they're like, hey, download our free book or get a copy of our free book. Cool, send it to me. And I've joined other people's business groups just because their marketing was so good. I wanted to see more of it, right? That is or is not personal injury work, just to see what other folks are doing, just to get their shock and awe and see it and get some new ideas, right? That's why we did that, and that's when I first found out about the digital books, where you mail a book and somebody opens it up and a video plays. Or I did somebody's, and that was the first time I got a personalized video where, they just splice my name into the front and they send it to me, right? Hey, Shane, here you go. So there's a ton of value in doing that and continuing to do it as your career progresses.
Yeah. What I think the key too is, like, number one, like you said, you can swipe what you see other marketers doing and be like, hey, that's a great idea. And I think another angle looking at this as well, both are equally as valuable, but that second angle is, what do you now need to do to shock your people, right? Your clients, your leads. You've seen what everyone else is doing. If you just go and do exactly what they're doing, well, that's not probably very shock and awe because everybody else is doing it. How do you then, like, that's where you can ask those questions, like, what do you need to do? Maybe it is the personalized video message. Like, that doesn't happen often because that's too many leads. I can't grab my cell phone and talk into it and say, hey, Shane, right? And realizing maybe that's your shock and awe, but like helping you see what's in the marketplace right now and what was shock and awe 12 months ago or 2 years ago, it might not be shock and awe anymore. Right. And so it's that ability to just constantly be innovating what it is that you're doing. Because sometimes we'll get in our own little silo and we'll think what we're doing is this magical thing, only to realize that everybody's doing it and we've just become white noise. We're no longer. So that's where it's got to continually evolve. And one of the easiest ways to do that is knowing, what are your competitors doing? How are they doing it?
And also, let's be clear, swiping is different from stealing, right? Swiping is, you see their stuff, you see their ideas, and you modify them and make them your own. Yep. Which doesn't mean you take their stuff and just take their address off and put yours there. Right? Yeah. That's stealing. Swiping is you just use it for the idea and you do it that way. Which there's perfectly fine with that. There's also people who, honestly, if you can license their stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And you can just, and that's perfectly valid. And that's, where you're giving somebody some money and you're taking all their ideas and you're just basically substituting your name for theirs. Yeah. But you don't want to do that unethically. You don't want to just steal their stuff.
No, and I'm glad you made that distinction because, and that's why I use the word swipe, because swiping is totally, everybody does it all day long. No, right. There's very few ideas that are brand new ideas that have never been thought about by anyone else, that you weren't inspired by what somebody else did. That's swiping. It's taking, hey, that looks like a great idea, let me make it my own. But yeah, but plagiarism also exists. We all know that.
It does, and it's not good.
No, people steal. Okay,
and that's always frustrating too, is when people steal your stuff.
All right, so that brings us to a close of our shock and awe. What is shock and awe? What do you need to do it for? Why do you need to do it? We appreciate you guys being listeners of the show. Stay tuned for next week when we are going to now dive into part 2, where we talk more about the follow-up. So once you've done the shock and awe, what do you actually do next? And what are some tips and techniques that you want to use on a regular basis to ensure that your shock and awe isn't wasted and you actually get the results you're looking for? So we'll see you next week on part 2.